Hi friends, Kara Corey here and welcome back to the channel. Today we are talking about a topic you all really wanted me to cover, and that is energy drinks. Energy drinks are one of the fastest selling beverages in the world, second to bottled water. They are just huge in the market of supplements and much talked about and discussed whether or not they are healthy, whether or not they are safe for use, and whether or not this dietitian approves of them. So if you are interested in hearing more on this topic, be sure to hit that like button. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel, and let's get going with today's video. Energy drinks have been around for a while now, but they continue to grow and grow, and in the market we see more and more different types coming out. I have a selection here in front of me today. I wanted to just review them in terms of ingredients. We're going to talk about those, how they vary from drink to drink. They're all different kinds, all different types. So what I want to do for you today is break down some of the ingredients, some of the things that you as a consumer can look for. And maybe you're not into energy drinks, maybe you're a pre-workout kind of gal or guy. A lot of the information I'm going to share with you today, it will help you make a better decision as to whether or not these are something you want to incorporate into your lifestyle or not. I find it very interesting because I will disclose I drink energy drinks, and I posted one of these, not this one in particular, but something on my Instagram stories not long ago. And quickly I had a couple DMs being like, I'm really surprised as a dietitian you're promoting this and drinking an energy drink. So I won't go too far down the rabbit hole on that, but that's just like a very interesting statement to me, what someone is trying to imply there. Just because I drink an energy drink and I'm a dietitian, what does that mean? Why does that upset you? Why does that disappoint you in terms of what my career path is? Is that because you're deciphering it's a bad thing to have, it's harmful? As a dietitian, I shouldn't be promoting it. So this video is very interesting for me to break down for you guys. Let's talk about why we even drink energy drinks. Number one, sometimes I like to drink them just because they taste good, right? I would consider that a benefit. I actually listed that as a benefit here. They do taste good, and sometimes we just want a tasty beverage to get us going for our day. Sometimes packaging. I didn't actually add that to the list, but sometimes it's not a benefit, but sometimes the packaging is actually what can lure us into wanting to try something, right? And I have to say, the energy drink market really nails it when it comes to packaging. If I'm going into a gas station and wanting a drink, whether or not I'm looking for energy, the packaging blows it out of the water. So much more engaging, enticing than a soda, than a water, right? They do such a good job with packaging that as a consumer, we want to buy it, regardless of what's in the ingredients, and maybe we don't even check it. Oftentimes though, those of us that reach for an energy drink are usually looking for a couple of things. Number one, possibly looking for an increase in our physical endurance. That's maybe why some of us will grab one of these, have it on our way to the gym, utilize it as a pre-workout to really get our day going, hopefully help us perform a bit better. Maybe you're into sports, running, whatever it may be, having one of these to really improve your physical endurance during whatever activity it is you may be doing. The other main reason why we usually have energy drinks is just to increase our mental alertness, our sharpness, our reaction time to things. So if you're someone that wakes up feeling tired, maybe you're feeling a bit sluggish, or maybe it's later on in the day and you're kind of hitting that 3 p.m. crash where you're just not able to focus, that's often when someone may grab an energy drink to just bring back up that alertness, give us that boost. That way we feel a little bit better, right? It not only makes us a little bit more alert, but it also does cause some feelings of happiness. We get a little bit of dopamine that's released as we consume caffeine. So those are the main reasons why we typically grab energy drinks. Are there some side effects? Yes, and we're going to talk about what actually happens when we drink an energy drink. But the biggest thing that I want to review here for you today is what is an energy drink? What is typically found in an energy drink? As I mentioned, depending on which one you choose, the ingredients are going to vary. The caffeine content is going to vary as well. That's very important. So we're not just talking about drinking a black cup of coffee that has caffeine in it from the coffee bean. We are talking about a drink that is comprised of a ton of other ingredients there that will alter how you feel. It will alter that mental alertness, that physical endurance, and it'll also alter what comes after that. So caffeine in an energy drink can vary. I put here, generally speaking, anywhere from 70 milligrams to 300 milligrams and up. That's something that as time's gone on, the market has expanded. We've seen energy drinks coming out with higher and higher caffeine content. I want to say the highest one I have here today is the Bang energy drink. And if you're lucky enough, you will be able to find on the actual label where the caffeine content is listed, but it isn't always that black and white. This is a dietary supplement, so it's not regulated the same way as the food industry with what's listed on here. And with all those other ingredients in there, you have to be careful understanding how much total caffeine you're actually consuming. So the Bang energy drink does state one serving of Bang provides 300 milligrams of caffeine, which is more than 2 cups of coffee. So it does list that. It also does give a warning that too much may cause nervousness, irritability, sleeplessness, and occasionally rapid heartbeat. So there is some warnings, some cautions on here that we can look forward to, but really anywhere from, you know, depending on the can size to this, I was going to say sugar-free, it's not sugar-free. This Red Bull, this is a smaller can size, only 8 ounces here, but that's 80 milligrams of caffeine. So it's going to depend on what size you get, what brand you get, maybe even what flavor. The caffeine is all very different. So I highly recommend, if you are an energy drink consumer, to be aware of which one you're consuming and how much caffeine is in it, as well as what other caffeine sources you may be consuming throughout the day, because that's gonna all add up, which can play into whether or not this is a healthy option for you. I don't know that I even wanna say it's a healthy option, but whether or not it's a safe option for you. Let's leave it at that. So moving into other ingredients, we are gonna have caffeine that is gonna come from, oftentimes in some of these, it's just gonna be listed from caffeine. You don't always know the caffeine source, so sometimes it will say it comes from coffee bean extract. Sometimes it'll say caffeine from green tea extract. So there are different sources of where the caffeine comes from. The next ingredient that we often find in most energy drinks is guarana. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but let's keep going with it. Guarana is also a caffeine source. So similarly to the caffeine you see listed in the ingredients, if you see guarana listed, that's also going to provide you with additional caffeine. Oftentimes, that total amount of caffeine they list on the can is coming from the ingredient caffeine. It's not always taking into consideration this ingredient right here. So you have to think about the fact that maybe you know 150 milligrams of caffeine makes you feel pretty good, but if there's additional caffeine sources in there, you could be taking in much more caffeine than that bottom line that's listed on the can. Not to mention, caffeine sources, depending on where they come from, can be absorbed differently. So for guarana, for instance, plant derived, so derived from a natural source. Natural doesn't always mean healthy, but it is from a plant. It's slower absorbed. So while when you consume basic caffeine, it hits your bloodstream in about 10 minutes, guarana is going to take a little bit longer to have that slower release, which means it could take a little bit longer before you feel that full peak of the caffeine in your system. So just keep that in mind with what ingredients provide more stimulation. Caffeine is a stimulant. That's what it does. It stimulates us. Guarana is going to do the same thing. I did list up here too B vitamins. So that's something I want you to think about in a couple of different ways, okay? When you look at all these cans, they all provide a different amount, but mostly you're gonna find that they have B vitamins. We have niacin here, vitamin B6, vitamin B12. That's pretty standard across all energy drinks. Depending on how caffeine sensitive you are, you might get buzzed feeling just from the additional B vitamins if you're not used to incorporating B vitamins into your supplement routine. So now we have to think about how much caffeine's in there, how much guarana is in there, and B vitamins and how that impacts us. If you are someone that takes other supplements on the day-to-day, maybe you take a hair, skin, and nails, maybe you take a multivitamin, maybe you take other things, I want you to have an awareness not not only of what's in the energy drink, but an awareness of what you are doing. I really think oftentimes we lack this self-awareness of what we're doing in life. And we so quickly want to blame the other things. We want to blame the energy drink. We want to blame everything else. But make sure you're self-aware of what you're already doing in your lifestyle, what you're already consuming. And by consuming one of these, what you're doing. Are you going overboard? B vitamins are something that you should hopefully be getting in through your diet. In particular, if you're consuming meat sources, it's likely you're getting a lot of B vitamins. So if you're additionally taking a multivitamin every morning and then separately taking a hair, skin, and nails, and then you take a little pre-workout and then you have an energy drink. I know you may be like, Kara, that's excessive. No, that is the reality for a lot of people. And we forget to kind of realize how much did we just consume. You do not need that much when it comes to your B vitamins. This right here, vitamin B3, 250% of your percent daily value, B6, 240%, B12, 490%, pantothenic acid, which is B5, 400%. So essentially, if you are consuming one of these drinks, you are already 2 to 4 times over the recommended daily amount for what you need in your diet. That is not counting in your food sources or any other supplements you are having. So when you look at drinking an energy drink, and if it's healthy for you, start to consider what else is coming on in through your diet. And if that's going to impact you, because anything in excess can make you not feel well. So even if this was caffeine free per se, but bumped up in B vitamins, which happens a lot. There's a ton of flavored waters on the market that have loads of B vitamins in them. You have to be careful. You have to be an aware consumer, reading labels and having an understanding of how much is too much. All right, so that's B vitamins. People think they're harmless, not necessarily harmless. We get them in tons of other places. Taurine, I clearly cannot write from a distance. I just screwed that up. Taurine. That's kind of like Red Bull's big thing with taurine. It gives us wings. That's the slogan there, right? I always hated Red Bull. I think it tastes nasty. Taurine is an amino acid we not only make in our bodies, we consume through food. A lot of meat sources contain taurine. It actually is good for us. It helps with our immune system as well as our nervous systems. It's also thought to help increase our alertness and our performance levels. So while with caffeine and your B vitamins, and it lists out for you the percentage, things like guarana, taurine, L-carnitine, ginseng, some of those other items, they're not going to list the amount that's in there, nor is there necessarily an amount that's recommended to consume or amount recommended as safe. So in terms of taurine, I don't really consider anything super harmful there. It is an amino acid. We do get it from food. There are thought to be some benefits to it. Just something to be aware of with the ingredients. It's gonna give you that increased alertness. Is it a caffeine source? No, but partnered with caffeine and with guarana, with the B vitamins, it's just adding more and more layers to that level of alertness that it's gonna provide within your body. Next up, I have listed here L-carnitine. L-carnitine is a chemical. It's made in our body. It's made in our brain, in our liver, in our kidneys. And what L-carnitine does is actually help us utilize fat and release the energy from fat, so that not only are we burning fat, but we're also releasing the energy so we feel a bit more energized. L-carnitine is something that's been around for a while. Folks use it to supplement with it on their own. I used to a long time ago for competing purposes. I would take L-carnitine every day in hopes that it could possibly help me break down a little bit more fat, release the energy. I don't have any issues with the use of L-carnitine in our supplements or in our drinks. Is it making a huge difference? I don't really know. I think it's kind of one of those other like fluffer ingredients they throw in there to make it look like, ooh, I'm getting a lot of good stuff. Whether or not it's at a high enough amount, dosed high enough to actually produce any results, likely not. It's likely not. You're not gonna know. It doesn't list for you how much of each ingredient is in there. All right, sugar. I wanted to include sugar because I think this conversation can go two ways. One, when we talk about energy drinks that are comprised of sugar, and then we also have our sugar-free versions. So the sugar energy drink conversation goes a little bit different in terms of me as a dietitian and what I would recommend to you guys. Your basic Monster energy drink here. This includes 58 grams of carbohydrate, which 54 of those are added sugars to this. You're getting 54 grams of added sugars. So we're now not only talking about the energy boost from all those ingredients I already mentioned, you're talking about the natural energy you're gonna get from simple sugar being absorbed into your bloodstream. We're now talking about not only a crash that's gonna occur, likely around an hour or so later after you consume one of these, but it's kind of gonna be a double whammy because now you're also crashing from the sugar. So it is a bit different when you're talking about the sugar versus the sugar-free. That's a debate all in itself, right? Because folks are either okay with artificial sweeteners. I hear people say all the time, like, artificial sweeteners are just as bad as sugar. Not sure I agree with that statement, but that is a whole separate issue we can dive down and revisit in a later video. For my recommendation on drinking energy drinks, I would never advise you to drink an energy drink that had 60 grams of sugar in it. That is just useless carbohydrate that's not going to be good for you. It's not going to be good for your weight. It's not going to be good for your blood sugar, increase your risk of diabetes. In addition to some of the other risks that come about from energy drinks, I think you're doubling your chances of having a harmful effect when you drink energy drinks. So thankfully, I feel like there's tons of sugar-free alternatives out there if you are someone that's interested in still consuming an energy drink. Minerals. So I mentioned sodium and potassium. I don't feel like most athletes or anyone that consumes energy drinks are looking for minerals from it, but maybe you are. Something to be considerate about. Sometimes they have potassium, oftentimes they don't, but they do have sodium. This one does have potassium actually, probably because it's got milk in it and phosphorus in it too, but the sodium on these can be quite high. So we can go anywhere from 70 milligrams of sodium up to nearly 500 milligrams of sodium, which actually is really quite high for a beverage. So when we think about the average American diet, we're actually supposed to consume around 2 grams of sodium a day, or 2,000 milligrams. Don't want to go too far over that. So if you're drinking one energy drink that already has 500 milligrams of sodium in it, you're 25% of the way there with getting very close to having a pretty high sodium diet. So not something people really think about when they're drinking energy drinks, right? You're not thinking about sodium. I hear people be like, oh, don't salt your food, or don't eat the pretzels, they're so salty, which actually pretzels are a lot lower sodium than an energy drink. So these are things to be considered about, especially if you have blood pressure issues, and caffeine is also going to influence your blood pressure. Last thing I have listed here as a common ingredient that influences the overall energy is ginseng. Ginseng is derived from a plant. So, you know, guarana and ginseng, both herbs from plants. Ginseng is actually an herb I utilize by itself. Jason and I buy that herb. It does help with immunity function. It's thought to. There are different types of ginseng. It can also help with blood sugar regulation. Obviously, that's probably going to be counterintuitive if you're consuming a high sugar energy drink. It can also help increase your focus naturally. So ginseng does not have caffeine in it, but it's another one of those ingredients that increases your focus. Now that we've discussed the majority of ingredients you will see in your energy drinks that will influence those energy levels, let's talk about what happens when you actually drink it. So the first 10 minutes, that's about how long it takes for the caffeine to enter your bloodstream. So you have the drink at 1 o'clock, at about 1:10, you're gonna kind of start to feel a little bit good. You're gonna feel a little bit of a burst starting to go through your body when that caffeine hits your bloodstream. So not too long, usually you see pretty quick results, which is part of the allure, if you will, with an energy drink, is that quick energy, right? 15 to 45 minutes, that is when you're gonna see the peak in your bloodstream. So 15 to 45 minutes in, you are really gonna be seeing and feeling the most effects from it. So whether or not that's going over good with you or not, that is gonna be that time that it's really optimized within your body. 1 hour in is when the effects are gonna kind of start to subside. So you don't have a long time here. It's gonna depend on the ingredients in there and the amounts, along with what other herbs are in there with it. Is there ginseng in there? Is guarana in there? What types of caffeine? This is all gonna impact the absorption and how long it stays in your system. But overall speaking, generally about an hour in is gonna be it. And then you're kind of gonna start to have that peak drop down a little bit. 5 to 6 hours is the half-life overall for caffeine. So at that point in time, 5 hours later, about 50% of that caffeine is gonna be eliminated from your body. Understand though, everyone has a different tolerance here when it comes to caffeine and all these other ingredients. Age, gender, your activity level for that day, all these different things are going to come into play. And we all just have a different tolerance for how we feel caffeine. It's important to mention too, if you're someone that's a regular caffeine drinker, if you're drinking an energy drink every single day, about a week in, you're gonna start to kind of see a little bit of a diminished effect from it because you will have a tolerance to it. That's where you see a lot of people start to need more and more. Maybe instead of 1 energy drink, they go to 2. They start to add more into their day if they need it. So you can have a bit of a tolerance built up to it, which can be dangerous if you start to layer on more and more. 12 hours is going to be the amount of time until it's really out of your system. So 12 full hours. An hour in, you're already beyond the peak, and that peak's starting to come down. Yet still, 12 hours it's going to take to fully get everything out of your system. So that's where you can kind of start to understand how this can really impact people's sleep, especially when you're feeling like, oh, I had that 12 hours ago, like I'm good to go. It can still play into disturbing your sleep, your ability to relax, and kind of not have that restlessness. When talking about sugared versus non-sugared, like I mentioned before, that can kind of worsen all these effects, right? So I talked about the peak in the bloodstream an hour in. If you're having a sugared version versus sugar-free, it's gonna be a double whammy for you. That sugar crash is gonna hit you in addition to the caffeine crash, which can ultimately start to give you that withdrawal feeling too. As I mentioned, caffeine's a stimulant. It can feel really addictive. It has addictive properties. So you can start to feel withdrawal symptoms as well. So something to be considerate about. I do want to mention in here too, is it safe for kids? Because with this video, I want to speak more to adults because I feel like adults are the ones who watch my videos. I believe it'd be irresponsible for me to not mention it being safe for kids. This is something highly debated, honestly, because it has been tried to be put into place as a federal state level ban, if you will, for minors to not be able to purchase energy drinks. At least in the US, that has not happened federally. I think different states bring this bill forward and continue to reassess it, but I don't know of any states in the US that actually have a ban. But due to the few deaths, I shouldn't say few, but there have been deaths that have occurred, in particular with minors. That is where people have tried to create this ban so that kids can't buy energy drinks. Now, why is it okay for adults to and not kids? Thinking about it, kids' brains, their bodies are not developed yet. What they should be consuming should not be the same as adults necessarily in the ingredients that are in here. Kids, their brains aren't developed, like I said. They're not going to be making smart decisions. Maybe adults don't either, but their ability to really be considerate and responsible about how much they drink may not occur. They could drink several of these in one day. And that is probably not going to be ideal in terms of a child consuming that much caffeine. As a child, I don't remember having access to these drinks. I don't know if they were really around. Like maybe Red Bull?
Jolt was the thing when I was around.
Oh, the soda.
Double the caffeine. Double the caffeine. So you have 120 milligrams.
Yeah, that's true.
Now they're just all bumped up even more.
Yeah, I feel like in today's world, like when I go into Starbucks even to get a coffee, I'm in line and I'm waiting behind kids that are ordering venti drinks and all these fancy drinks. things like that, that I'm just feeling like, you're a child, you shouldn't be consuming all this yet. Maybe as adults, we shouldn't be consuming it either, but especially the kids. And this stuff really markets to kids. Like I mentioned before, the packaging is really enticing. It really does kind of draw you in, not only as an adult, but as a kid. So I can kind of understand as a parent wanting some kind of ban being in place so that your kid can't just take their lunch money and go buy a Monster and start pounding Monsters. So let's talk about some of the health risks that are associated with drinking energy drinks. Kind of alluded to some of them. One of the things we need to talk about kind of separately when it comes to health risks is pairing the alcohol with the Red Bull, right? We do this a lot, and the Monster. Heck, I've done it before. I think many of us have done it. That can get really dangerous. I think that is when, when you combine the two together, the alcohol and everything that's in an energy drink, you got a lot of poor decision making that's probably going to happen that night. Probably going to have a lot of regrets the next morning. It's one of those things where like your eyes are just bulging out of your head. That cannot be good for your internals. And how many of those are you kicking back? If you're out to the club, the bar, having several drinks in a night, who knows how much energy drink is being put into your drink. Call me old, but I'm like, just avoid it. Don't do it. I don't think it's worth the risk of combining those two together. That is when we can see issues. Health risks are really going to come about when you abuse this kind of stuff. So in general, if you're consuming one energy drink as a healthy adult, is that going to be harmful? Are you going to die from it? Probably not, but there are some things to consider. Number one being the recommendation for caffeine overall to have it in a safe level is about 400 milligrams per day. So as I mentioned earlier, being mindful of how much you're consuming. Caffeine doesn't just come from coffee. Doesn't just come from energy drinks. We get it from food. There's a lot of foods now that have caffeine added to it. Chocolate, as we know, people kind of forget about it, but chocolate also has caffeine in it. There's other drinks. There's flavored waters that you don't even realize that have green tea extract added to it. So the caffeine can really add up throughout the day. So you have to do an inventory and have an understanding of how much caffeine you really are taking in through your diet to assess whether or not this is going to be safe for you. Number two, what is your health looking like? Are you truly a general speaking healthy adult? Do you have any underlying heart issues? That's the part that gets a little scary because heart issues, you don't always know. You can have issues with your heart and feel and live a healthy life forever and not even know. It can be undiagnosed. So I think that's where some of the issues can tie in here. When we're looking at the deaths that have occurred, it's typically been from people consuming not just one energy drink. There's usually more to the story than that. So it sounds scary and you hear deaths from energy drink because that's very clickbaity. But from what I could tell from studies looking at the health implications, usually we're talking about, even a healthy person, but consuming 3 in a day. To me, consuming 3 energy drinks in a day just sounds wild, something I wouldn't do, but I know it's done all the time. So you have to kind of think about what you're consuming. Are you healthy? If you are, okay, but there's still going to be a little risk there, right? So the health risks, the implications, obviously when we're drinking caffeine and all those other ingredients that really increase our alertness, we're going to increase our heart rate. So our heart rate is going to be bumping. With increased heart rate, that could increase your risk of any kind of cardiovascular events or disease, especially if you have underlying issues, irregular heart rhythms, and just overall increased stress on your body when your heart rate is that elevated. Disrupt sleep. So that's a big one. If you're drinking energy drinks because you're tired and your sleep is not good, maybe you need to take a step back and assess the sleep and see if something can be done there versus just piling the caffeine on more and more every single day. So someone who consumes these regularly or all day long, you could find that you have very disruptive sleep, which as we know, sleep is one of the #1 things linked to our health and living a long lifespan. So that's definitely something to be cognizant of. GI issues is another big one. Anytime you're increasing that caffeine, you're increasing the transit time in your body, it could lead to GI upset, GI distress, diarrhea, etc. So that's something to consider. Neurological issues. Are you getting a headache? Dizziness, sometimes seizures occur. One of the other things to consider here with the ingredients too, I did grab this fruit punch one. This one also has red dye number 40 in it. Not sure your thoughts and feels on red dye number 40. A lot of people avoid that, won't let their kids consume it. I know for me personally, I've seen a correlation with drinking beverages that have red dye number 40 in it and immediately having a headache. And it's not the energy drink, because I'll drink the same energy drink without it. Maybe a white one that doesn't have the dyes in it. Although just because it's white, sometimes they do still have dyes, all right? It doesn't have to be red to have red dye number 40. I've had vanilla pudding with red dye number 40 in it. So this is where you just have to create an awareness of really looking at the ingredients and what's in there and how it's impacting you. So is it just the energy drink to blame, or is it a particular ingredient, or is it everything you're doing as a whole in that day? The other thing that can occur too is anxiety, right? Just overall anxiety from the up. We talked about the up, really feeling great, feeling optimal, peaking and then coming down, having withdrawal, creating anxiety. There's a lot that can kind of play into how all these ingredients affect you. Are you gonna die if you drink one? Generally speaking, I'm gonna safely say I think not, but I think you do need to be aware of how healthy you are, what you're doing in your day-to-day life. Sure, you could share this information and talk to your doctor. I'll throw that out there. But I think most doctors are gonna tell you not to consume energy drinks, because are you getting any main health benefit from it? Going back to the benefits, we talked about physical endurance. I think it's limited. You are gonna get a little bit of endurance from it, but actual strength and power, studies have not shown that energy drinks really improve your strength and power. There's probably other supplements there that could be used, or other things you could be doing naturally to increase your strength and power. Mental alertness and reaction time. Again, we love that. That's why we often lean towards it, but it's for a limited time. 15 to 45 minutes is our peak. That's all we get with it. So in the long span of the day, is it worth it? You have to make that decision. Is it gonna lead you? Is it gonna be your gateway to having 4 to 5 in a day plus several other cups of coffee? I don't know. That's when it can probably get really harmful. Generally speaking, staying within that 400 milligrams of caffeine per day, I think is a pretty safe guideline. So if you're gonna choose to have a Bang Energy with 300 milligrams in it, probably gonna wanna skip any other caffeine sources throughout the day in effort to really save your heart. Your heart's a muscle. We gotta take care of that heart regardless of how young or old we are. I think my best advice, my main takeaway for you all is that anything in excess is not good for us. We live in a society where we think and more is better, especially when it comes to supplements, herbs, even caffeine, B vitamins, and that's not the case. It can actually make you feel really crummy if you go into more toxic levels with some of these things, whether it be from the vitamins or from the caffeine. You gotta have some kind of awareness of what you're consuming. I do enjoy myself an energy drink on occasion, but if I have one, that's just it. I have one. I don't have multiple throughout the day. I'd love to hear from you guys down below whether or not you drink energy drinks, what your thoughts are on them. Would you let your kids drink them? I wanna know. Comment below. I hope you all found this video helpful. If you did, be sure to hit that like button, hit that post notifications bell as well. That way you know each and every time I upload. And I'll see you in the next one.